Hi everyone, welcome back to our Joseki series. My name is Ryan, and today we will keep doing the 9 to 1 cue josekis, but this time we will talk about 3-4 point josekis instead. So last week we did start point josekis, and now we'll move on to the 3-4. So if white approaches the high, we know what happens now if black attaches here. So what if black pincers? Then a common way for white to respond now is to attach to the corner. When white attaches, black can hane on this side. When white pulls back, then black does a 2-space extension. So now white has the possibility of doing this kosumi, but now it's accepted that this is slightly bad. So the new way to play this is to actually peep here instead and then attach. So this looks very complicated, but actually it gets simplified very quickly. So the purpose of this peep is to actually sacrifice these two stones to gain advantage on this side. So now black hanes, then white cuts. And then when black plays here, black has successfully captured these two stones. However, white can now directly cut here, and that's because black absolutely cannot let this stone get captured. So then all of these moves around here will be sente. So black Atari's on top, and then Atari's on this side, then white extends, then black connects. So in this case, white actually makes a few more exchanges to gain some aji on the outside. This is so that when black blocks, there's a lot of weaknesses. So then after these exchanges, white comes back to capture this stone. And then later, when white Atari's here, it's pretty much sente. Because if black tanukis, then this is very painful for black to having to capture and connect into a big dumpling shape there. So then later it will become like this. So but right now it's black's turn. So if black wants, black can play here to all the way enclose white. But white has a lot of territory here, and the outside is not as thick as it looks because it still has a lot of aji on the outside. So this is one version of the joseki. It looks very big, but I think it's very straightforward for those of you who are into the bigger types of joseki. So actually, it looks very simple, right? The 1-space low pincer, but actually it has a lot of variations. And instead of haneing on this side, when white attaches at the 3-3 point, black can also hane on this side. This version is actually much simpler than the one that I just showed you. So black can attach and pull back on that side. And now here white has a tsuji, and I'm sure many of you know already. So and it's actually just a wedge here. And now black has two options. So black can Atari below or up top. When black Atari is below, white can Atari, then black extends. So remember, so now black also has the choice of just capturing that stone, and white would capture this stone. So in this case, black would be developing on this side, but most of the time, black does want to extend this stone because the corner territory is quite big in that case. So then white would connect back, and now black comes back to protect this cutting point over here. So now white will go on top, black has to extend, and then white blocks, and black finally captures the corner. So in this variation, black gets the corner and white gets influence, and it's white's turn, so white can make a comfortable extension on this side. So in this variation, black is taking all the territory. Now, instead of towering below, black also has a very good option of towering above. Then white extends, and then black ataris here, and then blocks. So actually, right now, it's not good for white to escape these two stones, because usually white would have to give up more on the lower side as opposed to the top. So then it's best for white to just simply capture this one stone and let black capture these two. And then this Atari Ascente, black has to connect. So in this variation, even though it looks like black captured two stones, black doesn't have that much territory and white gets Sente. But black gets a lot of influence in the middle. And in the future, black can Atari and then extend out. So black gets much better control of the center compared to the last variation. The next one I will show you is actually a one space high pincer. So for this one space high approach, black can also pincer the high one. And now when white jumps, black jumps. So now white attaches to the corner. So now actually black has two options. Either to defend here, which actually looks a bit over concentrated, but most of the time this is the correct move. Black can also go into the corner, which is a little bit better for territory, but later when white pincers, then there is a very critical weakness here. So to not give white the privilege of having a Sente move here, most of the time black wants to defend here. And this is a very strong shape. So now white attaches and cuts. Then black can Atari and extend. Then white extends, and then black goes on this side. So in this variation, white is a bit concentrated, but originally it was black's corner. So black develops on both sides while white takes the center and is very thick. So remember, in all of these cases, there's something that is very important. So we've learned both high approach and low approach Joseki. But in many cases, during the low approach Josekis, when black pincers, it's not very severe. So many times you see that white could tanuki if black pincers during the low approach. The difference for the high approach is that for the high approach, when black pincers, it's not ideal for white to tanuki. And that's because locally, when black adds a move, this stone is not very light. Because when it dies, it's very heavy. When it dies, it could be very large. It's not very easily given up. That's usually what we mean by sort of light and heavy. But when it's the low move, and during a pincer, it's difficult for black to spend one move and make the stone very heavy. So that's the main difference between those two. So the last thing I want to talk about in this video is something that actually I've learned from a couple of game reviews at the recent Go Congress. And that is, I've seen that many people like to play, instead of the start point in 3-4, these moves. Here and here, so 3-5 and 4-5. So instead of showing you all these complicated variations, and I'm sure some of you know already that with the 3-5, if white approaches here, black could play this move. And this is called the taisha. And this is extremely complicated if white chooses to attach. But today I will show you an easy way to avoid this. So during this, if you get into this situation, the simpler response is just to play the kosumi and then take the territory and let black have some influence. So this is another sort of standard joseki. In this joseki, white takes a lot of territory, takes control of most of the corner, while black gets some influence on the outside. Now, even though it looks like black is very thick because there are 4 stones on the outside, but because of this shape, later there's a very critical weakness if white plays here. Black is very uncomfortable. So this is even for both players as well. So this is a very good way to avoid the taisha in this case. But if your opponent simply plays the 3-5, it's very easy to just approach the corner this way. This is a good way of simplifying the game. Right? So now black's only choice is to take the corner, and now we can just extend. So this is more or less an even result for both players as well. So same with the 4-5 opening. Now if you approach here, then you're falling into the trap that if black plays the nice move, this attachment you have to be very careful with, because when black honey is on the inside, most of the time white would have to end up giving up one of the sides. So to avoid that, again, we could simply just approach at the 3-5 point. And that makes black have to take the corner 3-3, and then we can extend. So these shapes, they're generally not very good. So people don't usually play these corners. So if you don't like these super hard, complicated fights, this is a simple way of making the game sort of not go into your opponent's ways. So today we talked about some 3-4 high approach josekis, and then also ways how to avoid these very complicated josekis if you dislike them. So there we have it. Today I went through 5 more josekis for 9 to 1Q. In the next video, I will talk about josekis for down-level players instead. So don't go away. Stay tuned for our next video. Don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and our website. And I will see you next time.